Hello and welcome to this week's Boardroom Buddies podcast. So you are sitting there listening to this podcast, or maybe even watching it on YouTube or through the website or whatever, or through even the link on LinkedIn. You may or may not be wondering how it actually appears in front of you. And I have to tell you that it's not a great deal to do with me. So this week I have a very special guest who is Gary Jones of Grow Radio, who is the person behind the scenes that takes my recording and the video and edits it and puts it all together with the music and the gaps and the pauses and all those other things and makes it into a podcast. So I'm very pleased to welcome Gary to this week's podcast. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Jackie, and thank you for having me on your podcast. To say that you don't do much, you do all the hard work. You have a chat with people, you engage them, you follow it up afterwards. I just do the tech stuff. It's all fun.
Yes, but you see, I suppose it's the tech stuff that I find completely frightening, whereas talking to people, I can do that.
And that's fair. And that's fair. You know, everyone's got their own different skill sets. And just like in the business, you wouldn't do every job. And if every job that you had to do, you'd outsource it. Do the same for a podcast.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a bit about podcasts. I particularly wanted to talk about your training because I hadn't, when we first started working together doing the podcast, I hadn't done your training or anything like that and didn't really know that's what you did as well. Because it's a bit daunting if you've never done this sort of thing before. You know, you think, you have the idea of, I'd quite like to do a podcast because I think that will help, kind of raise my profile, if you like, and add some value to my target audience. How do I go about it? And these were the questions that were, I don't know whether you remember or not, our first kind of meeting would, how do I go about it? What do I need? All that kind of thing. So we'll come on to that, I guess. But first of all, what is a podcast? Why is it important? How does it fit with your marketing? What's great about it?
So first of all, there's no other medium where you can enjoy in as many places as you can do a podcast. So you can listen to a podcast while you're driving, while you're gardening, while you're doing the washing up. You know, you can watch it if it's a video podcast, or you can just listen to it. So there's no other type of medium that you can absorb and engage with everywhere. You know, and podcasts are great. If you think about how we've learned through centuries and centuries, we've learned through the spoken word. And the podcasts are, for me, a natural extension of that. The most popular podcasts out there are people having a chat with different people like we're doing now. And I think that's because we're drawn towards the human connection. We're drawn towards listening to stories. We're drawn towards learning from other people. And hey, I'm nosy. So I enjoy listening into a conversation, especially when it feels like it's been recorded. So it's okay, but it does feel like I'm kind of earwigging a little bit. So that's what's great for me about a podcast is all of those points. Basically, a podcast is an audio file that you can download or stream. That's effectively what it is. So in the purest sense of the word, it's an audio file rather than a video that you watch or a blog that you read or a book that you read. A podcast is something that you listen to. You can generally find them on places like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, which are free apps to download. There's millions of other different tools out there to listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
But I always describe it for the people who don't know what a podcast is as kind of on-demand radio. So if you can tune into normal daytime TV and you can watch a show on their kind of schedule. Yeah. But most channels have an on-demand section where you can watch that program or tune into a particular episode of that program, like iPlayer for BBC, for instance. Podcast is basically that version, but for radio, effectively. It is. So effectively, people can tune in on many different episodes. There's millions of topics out there available to listen to. So you can listen to it whenever you want, and you can tune in for as long as you've got to do. Again, makes podcasts so accessible. It does. And I don't think there's any other way that a business could actually engage their clients and audience in that kind of way. So from a business sense, it's great. They can kind of put a piece of content out there, which their clients and the audience can listen to while they're driving, while they're picking up the kids, when they're walking, as well as sitting at the desk.
Mm-hmm.
There's loads of benefits to having a podcast, but I think the accessibility is one that people overlook.
Yes, yes. And so useful as part of your marketing, really, because not only is it, getting your message out there, it's adding value to your target client, but also raising your profile.
It separates you from other people.
Yeah.
Because there's not going to be many people in a room which is going to have a podcast. And not only that, you're not going to have the same type of podcast as what you've got.
No.
So everybody, if they start their own podcast, will have their own different take on different events, different questions that they ask, different guests. And even if they've got a crossover on guests with someone else, the way that they deliver those questions and the type of questions will probably differ. So everyone could have a podcast, talk to the same people, and probably get different answers and different questions that they ask.
Yes.
Again, it's just natural conversations.
Yes, yeah. And I know that because I have several business associates who also work with you, who also have their own podcasts, and we've all got a different style.
Yeah.
And then that's absolutely fine. It's like there's no rule that it's got to be a certain way, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah. And they can be whatever length you want. So you're not stuck to it's got to be half hour or it's got to be an hour, 45 minutes. If you want to do an episode which is 12 minutes, 31 seconds long, you can do. But if you want to do a 2-hour marathon, go for it. There's no rules about it in terms of what you can and what you can't load. It's for me, it's the little hidden gem, which is constantly growing. And in any kind of marketing mix, if you're a business, it sits alongside your blogs and your videos. That's what it sits on. Because ultimately, from there, you can make your social media content from there, linking it. Your web pages kind of reflect that as well. But also, taking it one step above those, you still need that really cool idea to start the show, or that way of linking it all in. So you have the idea to start off with. So for yours, it's Boardroom Buddies. Customer group, that's also your podcast. So that's your main idea. And the way that you help spread the word about that is you use your podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a natural extension of what you're doing.
Yeah. So I have guests which are specialists in their own area, and their podcast is either on the website or on YouTube or Apple or Spotify or whatever. And each specialist provides information. So if you've got a question relating to running your business about podcasts, or it could be marketing or an accountant or whatever, you've got that accessible, I think. So it's adding value, which is really important. Really important. Yeah,
you want to add value both to the audience,
but
also you're adding value to that guest by having them on your show, because that guest is being interviewed by you, who's the host, who's in charge of the whole community, and you're asking that person for their advice. As a guest, that's quite a important and kind of privileged way of thinking about it, to be fair, that actually you're saying, you can come along and you can share your value, your knowledge. That's quite a cool thing. And actually you're placing a lot of trust as a host into your guests when they come in.
I hadn't looked at it that way, but yes.
The thing is, when it comes to value, there's value for everyone, because obviously you're getting that guest's knowledge and kind of ideas and that kind of thing. So to be fair, being a guest on a podcast, there's no losers. The audience gets value, the guest gets value, plus also the added value that being a guest on a podcast is great for public speaking and really key to repeating messages, so it becomes really confident and really smooth. And also, the more you speak, the less ums and ahs that you kind of do as well. So there's benefits to the guest, but obviously for you, you're getting great content and you're talking to really cool people and making those connections. Yeah,
the content is brilliant, because at any point, as I've accumulated a bank of podcasts, I can go back and look at some of the content from, 18 months ago and think, I can update that, and it might be useful for social media right now and all that kind of thing. So it's something that you can reuse. It's really good. Yeah, which is a great marketing idea anyway, to reuse your content. Yeah. So, for listeners and viewers, All I do is I record my guest and this conversation, and then Gary picks it up and does his magic on it and produces it and puts it onto the Spotify and Apple and in YouTube for me, and it's just brilliant. So if you're not sure how that works, that's how it works.
Basically, I just do the tech stuff. It's for me, it's as you said, as I said before, I'm nosy. So every time I'm editing a podcast, I'm editing it as I would do a listener would listen to it, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. So for me, I edit it, I take the ums and the ahs and all that kind of stuff. I use software to do this. And then I sit down and listen to it. So I'm listening to it in exactly the same speed as the people
right,
listening to it now. And then that way, I can see which areas I need to kind of tweak, if there's any gaps that are too long, all that kind of stuff.
right.
So it's already gone through one editing process before I actually listen to it.
Oh, I
And
see.
then I literally just upload the file. Or I put the start, the ending, all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and upload the files to different places and share the links with you. It's yeah, it's
You
for me.
make it sound so simple.
I do. It literally is a process. That's all all it is. And when I explain it to businesses, they go, "Is that it?" It's like, yeah, effectively. There's bits and bobs you need to do between those.
Yeah, yeah.
But effectively, that's what you're doing. You're creating a file which you're happy with, and then you're sharing it, and then you're using somewhere to share it to all those different places.
Yeah. So what sort of equipment do I need?
So all you need is something to record it on, effectively. That's literally the main piece of equipment you need it. And if you're out and about, you could have a mobile phone, you can have a dictaphone, you can have a lavalier clip, whatever you want to do. If you're on a computer, you can get a USB mic that plugs straight into your computer. You don't have to, but I would say start with the equipment that you've got and you feel comfortable with. If you feel comfortable using Zoom to record it, use Zoom. Don't use a fancy equipment. Use what you know, and then you're lowering the barrier of doing it, so you're more likely to kind of carry on with it. But in terms of the equipment, you just need something to record it on. If you're going to do the editing side of it, again, you need something to edit it and send the links out and all that stuff. But again, a phone can do it, a computer can do it. You don't need fancy equipment to do it.
Yeah. I think had it not been so simple, and obviously, if you would not had explained it so well, I would not have been able to do it, or I'd have lost my mojo for doing it.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. Using what you've got, making it simple really works to start with, for sure. Yeah.
And can I just say that when you started, you actually started on a different level to some people. So a lot of people start, well, especially over the last couple of years, start doing podcasts online. So therefore, they're doing it via a method like Zoom or Teams, or whatever they are. Just like we're using Zoom now to do it. So for a lot of people, they don't have to worry about the sound quality or all that kind of stuff. When you first started, we had to focus. You were doing it in person, and then you've moved over to kind of online. But your first series was all in person. So we had to deal with wind and all that that we can't control, and especially because you did it in lovely places, which were lovely and visual. But there were country pubs, which meant you had knives and forks clattering and stuff like that. We didn't have it easy the first season, but that just meant that your learning process was slightly different to other groups, because we had to focus on that area rather than just literally jumping onto a computer and letting the computer and software to do the job. So you did actually do a fair bit more work than other people when it first started. I've got to give you credit for that.
Thank you. I actually really enjoyed meeting one-to-one and recording in a whatever public place or park or whatever. That was quite inspiring, and I don't know, the brain processing was different. It was really great, but you obviously can't control what's going on around you, and that in a similar way that you can't right now.
I've got lots of pets around me at the moment. I've been out most of the morning, for full disclosure for people. So yeah, there's pets around me. But the beauty of it is that I think over the last couple of years, people have got used to little bits like that. They have.
I think it makes it interesting.
Exactly. And to be fair, when it comes to having distractions around you, ultimately you want your environment to be as nice as calm as possible. But in real life, that sometimes doesn't happen. So you do have to kind of control what you control, and what you can't control, just let it be.
Yes. Okay, so for someone who is thinking about maybe doing a podcast, I know that they have a conversation with you, but you also do some training, don't you? So tell us about that.
Yeah. So pretty much every conversation I have with a potential client or someone who needs help podcasting starts with a free 20-minute call. And that 20-minute call, we can pretty much iron out a lot of stuff. And during that, it could be a case of talking about, what equipment they need, or how it fits in, or how does it fit into their time, or what processes they need, or what software, all that kind of stuff. And all I've done is, over the last kind of 4 or 5 years of talking to people about podcasting, because I've always had a kind of consultancy side to it, I just haven't really shouted about it. I put together an online course, which was
Right.
effectively what you went through when you first started your podcast. It was the same steps. It
Right.
was. So with yourself, we went through probably 3 or 4 calls of focusing
Yes,
on this, and we gave you daily kind of actions to do in between the calls. And by the end of it, we had a podcast. And all I've done is systemize that. So there's 30 different steps that I've identified to launch a podcast. And
Okay.
I've put that into a online guide where people can either do it themselves with no interaction with me, or you can choose to be guided by me. And we have regular calls to kind of keep them accountable, but
Right.
also to go through any issues that they've got. So we've got the 2 types of courses there. And yeah, I'm glad to say that people have joined. They are making the most of it, and I'm
Yeah.
seeing the progress bars kind of go up on a
Brilliant.
regular since it's been launched. So I know people are, using it.
So
Which
it's
is great.
like a preparation for launch, really,
Yeah.
answering all
So,
the questions and
yeah, it starts with basically getting to know your idea. So we're forming the idea, because for me, that idea is key to it. You can buy the equipment, you can put time block time in your diary to make sure you do it. But if your idea isn't suitable and it's not matching up to your audience's expectations or give value to them, you're dead in
yeah,
the water. So we
yeah,
spend quite a lot of time talking about the idea. Then we talk about who's going to be part of it. So are you going to get who are you going to get in guests? Those kind of stuff. We talk about the content plan for the show as well. So we make a 12-episode plan, which
yes,
kind of gives people an idea. Say it's the same process as what you went
yeah,
through, but it's the same process because it works. And it just means that after, some people can do it in a month, some people would take 3 or 4 months to do it. That's the beauty of it. But by the
yeah.
end of it, you're pretty much ready to go, including a section on editing. So if you want to learn how to edit a podcast, there's tutorials on there to be able to do it as
Oh,
well.
right. Okay.
Nice. So I now take all of my clients that I produce podcasts for through that process as well, allow them to do that. But people can do it themselves as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That is brilliant. Well, listeners, viewers, as I said, Gary Jones is brilliant. We couldn't do this without you.
Bless you, thank you. But the beauty is that with that course, it's available on my website, just a cheeky plug there.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's fine.
But also, if you're a fan of Udemy, the course provider, it's
Yes.
on there, and I don't set the price on there. So at the moment, it's 20 quid cheaper on Udemy than it is on my website. Now, when you pop on there, it might be cheaper than that. I don't know when you're listening to this, but if you're on Udemy, check it out. Yeah, check it out. I'll put a link into the show notes.
Yeah,
When I
yeah.
do.
Be
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. Thank you for coming on and being the guest and telling us about that. I was interested in the training that you're doing because I've obviously seen the social media stuff and all that. So that was great.
I must admit, the training bit is the bit I love. The bit I love, because that
Yeah.
at the end of the day, training for me is about empowering people and giving them skills to do it themselves,
Yeah,
which is great. So yeah, I do get a buzz out of training. I'm not going to lie.
that's brilliant. Thanks, Gary. That's been really helpful. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, so thanks for listening to the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the episode today and hearing Gary talk about podcasts and how easy it is, or how he makes it easy, and how you can learn about it as well. Because I have to say, when I first started, I hadn't got a clue. I've just got the idea and what I wanted to achieve with it and what I wanted to do with it, but I didn't know the how. So thanks, Gary. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening. Hope you've enjoyed the episode. Please subscribe so you know when the next one's coming, and look forward to speaking to you soon.